The needle pierced my arm for the 47th time in 6 months, and I watched my blood fill 3 vials with that same deep crimson that had supposedly been getting healthier with each passing week. Dr. Morrison smiled at me from behind his clipboard, the same rehearsed expression he'd worn since January. And I smiled back, because that's what grateful patients do when they're part of a groundbreaking clinical trial for stage 3 colon cancer. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I start my story, I would love to know what city you are joining me from. Feel free to share it in the comments. Now, let me immerse you in this story. The research facility smelled like antiseptic and false hope. I rolled down my sleeve, fingers trembling slightly as I fastened the button at my wrist. Through the window behind Dr. Morrison, I could see other participants in the waiting room, some with scarves covering their bald heads, others looking gaunt and hollow-eyed. I touched my own thick hair, grateful it hadn't fallen out, grateful my energy levels had remained steady. "Your markers are stable, Ebony," Dr. Morrison said, making another note on his tablet. "Continue with your current protocol." I nodded and gathered my purse from the chair beside me. The leather bag felt heavy in my hands, weighted down by the bottles of pills I'd been taking religiously. 3 times daily, never missing a dose? My daughter had set alarms on my phone to remind me. My grandbaby had decorated the pill bottles with stickers of butterflies and hearts. The elevator descended slowly through 12 floors. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal wall, exhaustion suddenly washing over me despite my supposedly stable condition. Something gnawed at the edges of my thoughts, an uneasiness I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor's daughter, Bethany, who worked as a research coordinator at the university hospital across town. She wanted to meet for coffee. "Urgent," she'd written, followed by 3 exclamation points. The coffee shop near my apartment building in Anacostia was nearly empty at 2 in the afternoon. Bethany sat in the corner booth, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes. She stood when she saw me, her movements jerky and uncertain. We embraced briefly, and I felt her body trembling. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from her. She pulled a folder from her messenger bag, glanced around the cafe, then pushed it across the table toward me. Her fingers left sweat marks on the manila surface. "I shouldn't have this. I could lose my job. But I saw your name, Miss Ebony, and I couldn't—" Her voice cracked. She pressed her palms flat against the table. "Open it." I pulled the folder closer. Inside were photocopied pages, dense with medical terminology and data tables. My name appeared highlighted in yellow across multiple pages. I squinted at the text, trying to make sense of the abbreviations and numbers. My reading glasses were in my purse, and I fumbled for them, my hands suddenly clumsy. The words came into focus slowly. Control group, placebo, standard care only. The folder slipped from my fingers, pages scattering across the sticky cafe table. My chest tightened, breath catching somewhere between my lungs and throat. I gripped the edge of the table, the formica cool and slightly greasy under my palms. Bethany reached across, gathering the papers with quick, nervous movements. Her eyes darted to the counter where a barista wiped down the espresso machine, oblivious to us. She slid the documents back into order, tapping them against the table to align the edges. I forced myself to pick up the top page again. My hands shook, making the text blur and refocus. There it was, printed in clinical black ink. Subject 047EE, enrolled Phase 3 cardiac intervention trial, assigned randomized control arm, receiving standard treatment protocol only. Duration 18 months. Current status month 14. 14 months. 14 months of driving to that pristine medical center in Georgetown, walking through those automatic doors, sitting in the sterile examination rooms, while Dr. Chen asked his careful questions and nurses drew my blood. 14 months of believing I was receiving cutting-edge treatment, something that might actually help my failing heart beyond the basic medications I'd been taking for years. I stood abruptly. The booth seat scraped against the floor, a harsh sound that made 2 college students at a nearby table glance over. My purse fell, contents spilling. Keys, wallet, loose receipts, my pill organizer rattling across the linoleum. Bethany dropped to her knees, scrambling to collect everything while I stood there, frozen, one hand pressed against my chest, where my heart hammered irregularly. The walls of the small cafe seemed to press inward. The smell of burned coffee and vanilla syrup turned my stomach. I could hear everything too clearly. The hiss of the milk steamer, the tinny music from overhead speakers, the traffic outside, my own ragged breathing. Bethany rose, depositing my belongings on the table. She grabbed my elbow, steadying me. Her grip was firm, almost painful. "Miss Ebony, sit down, please." I lowered myself back onto the seat, but my body felt disconnected, like I was operating a machine I no longer understood. Bethany slid into the booth beside me instead of across, her shoulder warm against mine. She pulled out another sheet, this one a spreadsheet with columns of data. Her finger traced down to a row marked with my subject number. The treatment group column showed detailed medication names, dosages, monitoring protocols. My column showed only the bare minimum, the same basic cardiac care any patient would receive at a community clinic. They told me I was getting the new treatment. I whispered, the words scraping out of my throat. Dr. Chen showed me charts. He talked about how the trial was helping patients like me. Bethany's jaw clenched. She flipped to another page, pointing to a section labeled Subject Disclosure Protocol. The paragraph outlined what participants should be told. That they would receive either the experimental treatment or standard care. That assignment was random. That neither they nor their primary care team would know which group they were in. But I remembered the consent forms I'd signed, the way Dr. Chen had smiled reassuringly when I'd asked directly if I'd be getting the new medication. His exact words echoed in my memory. "We're going to take excellent care of you, Miss Edwards. This trial represents our most promising approach yet." Not a lie, technically, but not the truth either. I pushed the papers away, unable to look at them anymore. Through the cafe window, I watched people passing on the sidewalk. A woman pushing a stroller, an elderly man with a cane, teenagers laughing and shoving each other. All of them living their lives, unaware that trust could be such a fragile, breakable thing. My phone sat on the table, Dr. Chen's number saved in my contacts. I had an appointment scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. Another blood draw, another examination, another set of questions for their data collection, while my actual heart continued its slow deterioration. Bethany wrapped her arm around my shoulders. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. When I saw the files, saw how they were talking about the control group in the meeting like you were all just data points." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "My mama always said you looked out for us when we moved here. I had to tell you." I gathered the papers, folding them carefully and sliding them back into the folder. My movements were mechanical, automatic. The shaking in my hands had stopped, replaced by something harder, colder. I placed the folder in my purse, zipping it shut with deliberate precision. Standing, I straightened my coat, smoothed my hair. Bethany looked up at me, her expression worried, uncertain. "Thank you, baby," I said, my voice steady now. "You did the right thing." The clinical building stood gleaming in the afternoon sun, all glass and steel and promise. I'd walked through those sliding doors a dozen times over the past 6 months, heart full of hope each visit. Today, my shoes struck the polished floor with different intent. The lobby spread before me, 3 stories high, with that massive abstract sculpture in the center. Twisted metal that was supposed to represent healing or progress or some other corporate nonsense. A woman in scrubs hurried past, barely glancing my way. 2 security guards stood by the far wall, one scrolling his phone, the other watching the entrance with bored eyes. I bypassed the elevators and headed for the stairs. My doctor's office was on the 4th floor, but I didn't want to see Dr. Chen yet. Not until I had more pieces, more proof than just Bethany's folder burning a hole in my purse. The 3rd floor housed research administration. I'd been up here once before, early in the trial, signing more papers while a cheerful woman with a clipboard explained about data privacy and confidentiality. The irony tasted bitter on my tongue now. The hallway stretched empty, that peculiar silence of office spaces between meetings. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. My reflection moved alongside me in the darkened glass of office doors. A woman who looked too calm, too composed, when inside everything was grinding and fracturing. A door at the end stood slightly ajar, light spilling into the corridor. Voices drifted out, muffled but distinct. I slowed my pace, my heartbeat quickening. The familiar flutter started in my chest, that irregular rhythm that had brought me here in the first place. I pressed my palm against the wall, steadying myself, breathing through it. Enrollment numbers are exactly where we need them. A man's voice, confident and pleased. The control group is performing perfectly, not a single dropout. Because they don't know. A woman this time, her tone flat. They think they're getting treatment. I moved closer to the door, keeping my footsteps soft. Through the gap, I could see a slice of conference room, part of a long table, someone's hand gesturing as they spoke, a projection screen showing graphs and numbers. That's the beauty of the design, the man continued. Complete blind on the controls. They comply with everything. Medications, lifestyle modifications, follow-up visits. We get pristine data without the usual dropout rates you see when people know they're not getting active treatment. My fingers found the folder in my purse, gripping it hard enough that the edges cut into my palm. The woman in the meeting said something I couldn't catch, and laughter followed. Not cruel laughter exactly, but casual. The sound of people discussing data points and outcomes, not human beings taking pills every morning with water, believing those pills were helping. I pulled my phone from my pocket, switching it to record, and eased it toward the gap in the door. My hands trembled again, but I held steady. Dr. Patel wants to extend another 6 months? The woman said. Says we need longer-term data on cardiac events in untreated patients. 6 months might be pushing it. We've already had 2 MIs in the control arm. Right, but both survived. And technically, that's within acceptable parameters for this patient population. 2 heart attacks, in people who thought they were being treated, who believed they were protected. I thought of the support group meetings, the faces I'd seen there. Gerald, who'd celebrated his normal stress test results. Patricia, who'd proudly announced her energy levels were improving. Which of them had it been? Who had felt that crushing pain and confusion, wondering why the medication hadn't worked, not knowing there never was any medication? I backed away from the door, my legs suddenly unsteady. The hallway tilted and swayed. I reached for the wall again, pressing my back against the cool surface, focusing on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they'd taught us in the trial orientation. Even their breathing exercises were probably fake, I thought. Just another way to make us feel cared for, monitored, safe. My phone was still recording. I stopped it, saving the file, then forwarding it to my personal email, then to Bethany, then to a cloud storage account I rarely used. Multiple backups, multiple locations. The journalist in me from 30 years ago, when I'd written for the neighborhood paper, still knew how to protect evidence. Footsteps approached from behind. I straightened quickly, tucking my phone away, composing my expression. A young man in a white coat emerged from another office, arms full of files. He nodded politely as he passed. "Afternoon," he said. "Afternoon," I replied, my voice smooth. He continued past the conference room and disappeared into the stairwell. The building settled back into its humming quiet. I could go to Dr. Chen's office now. I could walk in and lay the folder on her desk, play her the recording, watch her face as she tried to explain. But something held me back. Some instinct that said I needed more. Names. Specific names of who had approved this, who had designed it, who stood to gain. The directory on the wall near the elevator listed departments and personnel. My eyes scanned down. Clinical Trials Management, Cardiac Research Division, Patient Services. And there, third from the top, Principal Investigator, Dr. Raymond Blackwell. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime as I pressed the call button, my reflection staring back at me from the polished brass plate. Jaw tight, eyes hard with purpose. Dr. Raymond Blackwell's office was on the 6th floor, according to the directory. My finger hovered over the button before I pulled back. Too direct, too early. I let the doors close without entering, watching the numbers climb as the elevator rose without me. My heart drummed against my ribs, that familiar sensation from the trial still there, reminding me why I'd come here in the first place. The flutter, the weakness, the reason I'd trusted these people with my life. The stairwell door opened quietly when I pushed through. Concrete steps stretched upward, harsh fluorescent lights casting everything in surgical brightness. I climbed, my phone clutched in one hand, recording again. Every step, every floor, every door marked with numbers and department names. Evidence of where I'd been, what I'd found, in case something happened. On the 5th floor landing, I paused. Voices drifted from behind the door, loud, agitated. I eased closer, pressing my ear to the cold metal. Can't keep extending the timeline. A woman's voice cut through, sharp, executive. FDA wants results in 6 months, not 18. The control group needs to believe they're receiving treatment. That was a man's voice, older, measured. If we rush the deception protocol, we risk exposure. My breath caught. I fumbled with my phone, raising the volume, angling it toward the door crack. Then we adjust the placebo effects, the woman continued. Papers rustled. Give them temporary symptom relief? Something that feels like progress, but doesn't actually interfere with the data integrity. You're suggesting we manipulate their health outcomes? I'm suggesting we manage expectations, Raymond. Raymond. Blackwell himself. My hands trembled as I held the phone steady. The folder pressed against my chest, its weight suddenly enormous. They weren't just withholding treatment, they were actively deceiving us, making us think we were improving when we weren't, playing with our hope like it was just another variable to control. Footsteps approached the door from inside. I backed away quickly, too quickly, my shoe squeaking against the concrete. The sound echoed in the stairwell like a gunshot. The door swung open. A woman in her 40s stepped through, designer suit, tablet tucked under one arm. Her eyes locked onto mine, surprise flickering across her polished features before smoothing into professional concern. "Can I help you?" she asked. I straightened, forcing my expression neutral despite the rage burning through my chest. Looking for the restroom. Got turned around. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze dropping to the folder visible beneath my crossed arms, then to the phone still clutched in my hand. Something shifted in her eyes. Recognition, maybe? Or calculation? "Trial participant?" she asked, her tone carefully light. "Heart failure study," I confirmed. "The restrooms are on the main floor. You'll need to take the elevator back down." She gestured toward the stairs leading down, not taking her eyes off me. "These upper floors are restricted to research staff only." I nodded, moving toward the descending stairs, feeling her watch every step. My phone was still recording in my hand, capturing her image, her voice, the way she'd positioned herself between me and that fifth-floor door, like a guard protecting secrets. When I reached the fourth-floor landing, I glanced back up. She remained visible through the stairwell's open center, phone now pressed to her ear, speaking rapidly to someone. Her free hand gestured sharply. I took the stairs faster, my breath coming harder, that flutter in my chest intensifying. 3 flights down. 2. My legs burned. The main floor door burst open under my push, and I emerged into the lobby's manufactured calm. Soft music, comfortable chairs, that fountain still trickling its peaceful lies. The security guard at the front desk looked up as I passed, his expression shifting from bored to alert. Someone had called down already. Someone had marked me as a problem. Outside, the October air hit my face like freedom. I walked quickly toward the parking garage, not running, but not dawdling. My phone now safely in my pocket with hours of recorded evidence. The folder remained under my arm, its pages proof of systematic deception. My car sat on the 3rd level where I'd left it. I climbed inside, locked the doors, and sat in the driver's seat with my hands shaking so badly I couldn't immediately fit the key in the ignition. The key finally slid home. The engine turned over once, twice, then caught with a familiar rumble that steadied my nerves fractionally. I pulled the folder from under my arm and opened it against the steering wheel, scanning the pages again in the garage's fluorescent glare. My name appeared in column after column. Group C, control, no intervention. Every appointment for the past 14 months documented with clinical precision. Blood draws, stress tests, cardiac monitoring, quality of life assessments. But in the treatment column, beside every single entry, placebo saline. Not the experimental medication I'd signed up for. Not the drug they'd promised might strengthen my failing heart. Salt water, injections of nothing. My hands crushed the page edges. The paper crinkled, that sound amplifying in the enclosed space. Behind the pharmaceutical facade, Dr. Vincent Reese had built his trial on lies. 240 participants divided into 3 groups. Only groups A and B received the actual cardiac regeneration compound. Group C, 80 people like me, got theatrical performances every month. Needles that delivered false hope. The cost breakdown on page 7 made my stomach clench. Each participant's placebo treatment billed to insurance at $12,000 per month. $168,000 per person over 14 months. Multiplied by 80 people in the control group. $13 million extracted from insurance companies for saltwater injections and checkups that could have been performed at any community clinic. A vehicle door slammed somewhere on the garage's upper level. The sound echoed down through concrete and rebar. I looked up through my windshield at the ramp's ascending spiral, half expecting to see that blonde administrator from the stairwell rushing down with security in tow. The garage remained empty except for the scattered vehicles sleeping in their painted spaces. I shoved the folder into my bag and shifted into reverse. The tires squealed slightly as I backed out. Forward. Down the ramp. The exit ticket waited in my sun visor where I'd clipped it hours ago. Back when I'd still believed I was receiving treatment. Back when I'd trusted the system that promised to help me. The parking attendant barely glanced up as I fed my ticket into the automated machine. $8 for 4 hours. Small price compared to the $168,000 they'd stolen from my insurance. From me? From the 80 others who'd volunteered their bodies for science and gotten theater instead. The barrier arm lifted. I accelerated onto the street. 3 blocks from the research center, I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot and killed the engine. My hands still trembled. That flutter in my chest had evolved into a persistent ache, the kind that radiated down my left arm and made my jaw tight. Stress, probably, or the heart condition they'd been pretending to treat while documenting its progression for their precious data. I pulled out my phone and opened the video files. 47 minutes of footage. The laboratory with its pristine equipment and wall-mounted monitors. The 5th floor hallway with its locked doors bearing room numbers but no identifying labels. That administrator's face as she'd blocked my path, her voice clear and threatening on the audio. The file directory on the phone showed the automatic backup uploading to cloud storage. 63% complete. The progress bar crept forward with agonizing patience. A knock on my driver's side window launched my heart into my throat. A man stood outside, mid-40s, athletic build, wearing the dark blue uniform of private security. Not the guard from the research center lobby. This one had sharp eyes and a radio clip to his shoulder that crackled with static. I cracked the window 2 inches. "Ma'am, you can't idle here. Coffee shop customers only." His tone was professionally neutral, but his stance was wrong. Feet planted, one hand resting near his belt, body angled to see through my window into the passenger seat and back. "Just leaving." I reached for the ignition. His hand came up, palm out. "Could you step out of the vehicle, please?" The backup status on my phone read 79%. Not enough. Not nearly enough if he confiscated it. "I have a heart condition. I got dizzy and needed to pull over." True enough. My chest still ached, that pressure building behind my sternum like a fist slowly clenching. His expression didn't change. The radio on his shoulder squawked, a female voice requesting Unit 12's status. He pressed the transmit button. "Unit 12, still on location." My fingers found the key and turned. The engine roared to life. "Ma'am, I need you to—" I shifted into drive and my foot found the accelerator. The car lurched forward. Behind me, the security guard shouted something I didn't catch. I swung left onto the main road, checking the rearview mirror. He stood in the parking lot, radio to his mouth, head turning to track my vehicle. No sirens yet. No flashing lights pursuing through traffic. My phone showed 94% uploaded. I drove with one eye on the mirror, one on the road, one metaphorical eye on that creeping progress bar. At the next red light, it hit 100%. The files were safe in the cloud. Everything I'd recorded, everything I'd photographed, backed up beyond their reach. The light changed. I drove. The pressure in my chest had become a living thing by the time I reached my apartment building. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles pale against dark skin, and forced myself to breathe through clenched teeth. Each inhale felt shallow, insufficient, like trying to fill my lungs through a cocktail straw. The parking garage elevator swayed as it climbed. Or maybe that was me. I pressed my palm flat against the metal wall, feeling the cold through my fingertips, using it to anchor myself to something solid while the floor tilted beneath my feet. My apartment door required 3 tries to unlock. The key scraped against brass, missing the slot twice before sliding home. Inside, I made it 4 steps past the threshold before my legs gave out. The hardwood floor hit my knees hard enough to send shockwaves up my spine. I stayed there, hands splayed on the ground, head hanging between my shoulders. Sweat dripped from my nose onto the wood grain. My phone clattered from my pocket, screen lighting up with a notification. Dr. Chen had emailed. Subject line: Urgent. Please contact office. I dragged myself to the couch and lay there in the dim afternoon light filtering through closed blinds. The ceiling fan rotated overhead, making the same clicking sound it had made for 3 years, a rhythm I usually found soothing. Now each click seemed to sync with the arrhythmic pounding in my chest. Hours passed. The light changed from gray to amber to the deep blue of early evening. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the coffee table where I'd dropped it. I watched the screen illuminate with each incoming message, but couldn't summon the energy to reach for it. When I finally sat up, the room spun. I waited for it to stabilize, then grabbed my phone. 17 missed calls. 12 text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize except one, my daughter's cell. Mom, call me ASAP. Where are you? Someone from the hospital called, looking for you. Mom. My fingers moved across the keyboard. I'm fine. We'll call tomorrow. The lie felt heavy even through digital transmission. I pulled myself upright and shuffled to the bathroom. The woman in the mirror looked 20 years older than the one who'd left for her appointment that morning. Sunken eyes, gray undertones beneath brown skin, shoulders hunched forward like she was bracing against a strong wind. The pill bottle sat on the counter where I'd left it. Metoprolol, beta blocker, heart medication. I'd been taking it religiously for 6 weeks, morning and evening, trusting it was helping. Trusting I was in the treatment group. Now the bottle felt different in my palm. Heavier. I twisted the cap off and shook one tablet into my hand. White. Round. Perfectly innocuous. I held it up to the light, turning it between thumb and forefinger, searching for some visible sign of its true nature. Was this medicine or chalk? Treatment or placebo? I swallowed it with water from the tap, then immediately bent over the sink and vomited. The tablet came back up along with bile and the protein bar I'd eaten before my appointment. I retched until nothing remained, then retched some more, my body trying to expel what couldn't be expelled, the violation, the betrayal, the months of false hope. When the spasms finally stopped, I rinsed my mouth and looked at the bottle again. 43 pills remained. 43 more lies, if that's what they were. I dumped them all down the toilet and flushed twice. My laptop sat on the dining room table, screen dark. I opened it and navigated to the cloud storage. The files I'd uploaded in the parking lot waited there. PDFs, photos, voice recordings. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. The cursor blinked in the email address field. I had contacts, medical journalists I'd networked with at conferences, attorneys who specialized in pharmaceutical litigation, patient advocacy groups who'd been fighting for clinical trial transparency for decades. But my fingers wouldn't move. I sat there frozen, staring at that blinking cursor, while the clock in the corner advanced minute by minute. A sharp knock at the door made me jump. 3 hard raps, official and insistent. I closed the laptop and moved to the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a charcoal pantsuit. She held a leather portfolio under one arm. Behind her stood a man in a dark blue uniform, not police, but private security. different company from the parking lot guard. Another knock, harder this time. Ms. Edwards? My name is Patricia Holbrook. I'm with Nexus Pharmaceuticals' legal department. We need to speak with you. I backed away from the door silently. My heart hammered against my ribs, that familiar pressure building again behind my sternum. Ms. Edwards, we know you're home. Your car is in the parking garage. Her voice remained calm, professional, with an undercurrent of steel. We can have this conversation here, or we can have it with law enforcement present. Your choice. I pressed my back against the wall beside the door, fingers splayed against the cool plaster. My chest constricted, each breath coming shorter than the last. The familiar sensation of drowning on dry land crept through my lungs. Not now, not during this. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10, 15. Then, footsteps retreated down the hallway, 2 sets moving in synchronized rhythm. I waited, counting my breaths, forcing them deeper despite the tightness. Moving to the window, I eased the curtain aside with one finger. The parking lot sprawled below, bathed in sodium yellow light. The woman in the pantsuit emerged from the building entrance, her security guard trailing behind. They didn't head toward any vehicle. Instead, they took positions, she near the main entrance, he at the side exit that led to the trash area. Watching. Waiting. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. My daughter lived 3 states away. My sister hadn't spoken to me since our mother's funeral 2 years ago. The names blurred together, and I realized how small my circle had become. 60-hour work weeks and solitary evenings had whittled my relationships down to colleagues and acquaintances. The laptop called to me from the kitchen counter. I opened it again, pulled up the cloud storage, downloaded everything to a flash drive I kept in my desk drawer. The progress bar crept forward with agonizing slowness. 40%, 55, 68. Outside, the woman checked her watch and made a phone call. 79%. The security guard lit a cigarette, orange ember flaring in the darkness. 94%. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I declined it. Immediately it rang again. Same unknown caller. I powered it down completely. 100%. I ejected the drive and shoved it deep into my purse. Then I grabbed a second drive, formatted it quickly, and uploaded random files from my desktop. Photos, old work documents, nothing related to Nexus. This one went into my jacket pocket. The decoy might buy me minutes, maybe an hour if I was lucky. I changed into dark jeans and running shoes, layered a hoodie under my jacket. The kitchen drawer yielded $73 in cash. Not enough, but better than nothing. My credit cards sat in my wallet, useless now. They could track those the moment I swiped them. Through the peephole, the hallway remained empty. I engaged the deadbolt silently and moved back to the window. The woman still guarded the front. The security guard had shifted to the parking garage entrance, blocking the most direct route to my car. The fire escape. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, and the metal ladder ran down the building's east side, ending in the narrow alley between my building and the medical supply warehouse next door. I unlocked the window and pushed. It groaned, paint-sealed and stubborn. I shoved harder, muscles straining. The frame gave with a sharp crack that seemed to echo across the entire complex. I froze, watching the parking lot. The woman's head turned slightly, scanning, but she didn't look up. After 30 seconds, I exhaled and slid the window fully open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of car exhaust and distant rain. The fire escape rattled under my weight. Each step down sent vibrations through the rusted metal, tiny squeaks and groans announcing my descent. I moved slowly, testing each foothold, gripping the handrail with both hands. My purse swung against my hip, throwing off my balance. At the second-floor landing, I paused and looked down. The alley below was dark, illuminated only by the ambient glow from streetlights beyond. Dumpsters lined one side, overflowing with cardboard boxes and construction debris. No movement, no guards stationed here. Yet, I continued down. The ladder to the ground level was retractable, designed to prevent access from below. I lowered it as quietly as possible, but the mechanism squealed, metal against metal, impossibly loud in the stillness. The ladder descended in jerky increments until it clanged against the asphalt. My feet hit solid ground. I pressed myself against the brick wall and edged toward the alley's mouth, where it opened onto a side street. A car drove past, headlights sweeping across the warehouse wall opposite me. I waited for it to pass, then another, and another. Traffic was light but steady. When a gap appeared, I stepped out and walked quickly toward the intersection 3 blocks away. Behind me, shouts erupted, running footsteps. I didn't look back. The intersection's crosswalk signal blinked red. I jaywalked through slow-moving traffic, horns blaring, and ducked into a convenience store on the corner. The clerk, a young man with headphones dangling around his neck, barely glanced up from his phone. I moved to the back, past aisles of chips and candy, to the restroom. Inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, gasping. The tightness in my chest had become a vice, squeezing, crushing. My vision tunneled. I slid down to sit on the grimy tile floor, head between my knees. Not a heart attack, just panic. Just my body betraying me again. I counted backwards from 100, focusing on each number, each breath. At 73, my vision cleared. At 42, my hands stopped shaking quite so badly. At 19, I could stand again. The mirror showed a woman I barely recognized. Gray roots showing at my temples, eyes bloodshot and wild, skin ashen beneath the fluorescent light. I splashed cold water on my face and smoothed my hair back. When I emerged, the clerk was restocking cigarettes behind the counter. I grabbed a bottle of water and a protein bar, paid with crumpled bills, and left through the front entrance. The security guard from my building stood across the street, phone pressed to his ear, scanning the intersection. I turned left and walked steadily, not too fast, just another woman heading home. A bus stop appeared ahead, shelter illuminated and empty. The route map showed lines spreading across the city like arterial branches. I had no destination, no plan beyond moving, staying ahead of them. The flash drive pressed against my thigh through the purse fabric. Everything I'd discovered, documented, verified, names and dates, and blood work results that proved Nexus had knowingly enrolled patients in a trial designed to fail. That they'd manufactured placebos labeled as active medication. That people had died, were dying, while company executives collected data and prepared their FDA submission. That I was one of those dying patients. Block 810. The bus arrived with a hydraulic hiss, doors folding open to reveal fluorescent-lit interior and scattered passengers hunched in their seats. I climbed aboard, fed bills into the machine, and moved toward the back, choosing a seat with clear views of both exits. My reflection ghosted across the dark window as the bus lurched forward. A woman already becoming invisible. 3 stops later, a man in a dark jacket boarded. He didn't pay, just flashed something at the driver and scanned the aisle with methodical precision. His eyes swept past me once, twice, then locked on. Recognition flared across his features. I rose and moved toward the rear exit, pulse hammering. The bus slowed for a red light. The man pushed through standing passengers, one hand reaching beneath his jacket. I grabbed the yellow cord, heard the stop-requested chime, and pressed myself against the rear door. The driver announced the next stop. The man was 6 feet away now, 5, his mouth forming words I couldn't hear over the engine noise. The light changed. The bus rolled forward. I slammed my palm against the door release bar and stumbled onto the street as the bus continued past the designated stop. Horns blared. I ran across 3 lanes of traffic, dodging a taxi that skidded sideways, its bumper missing my hip by inches. Behind me, the man shouted something. I vaulted over a concrete barrier into a construction zone. Hard hat forgotten on its post. Yellow caution tape streaming in the wind. My shoes skidded on loose gravel. I caught myself on scaffolding, metal pipes cold against my palms, and ducked beneath a tarp covering stacked materials. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Heavy breathing. The man's radio crackled. Subject mobile, heading east through the construction site on 5th. I crawled deeper into the shadows, past pallets of brick and coiled wire. My knee struck something sharp. Pain exploded up my leg, but I swallowed the cry, pressing my hand over my mouth. Blood seeped warm through my pants. The footsteps moved away, then stopped. Silence stretched. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping left to right, illuminating dust motes and tool carts. I flattened myself against the cold concrete foundation, barely breathing. The beam passed overhead. Boots crunched closer. I could smell his cologne now, something sharp and chemical. My fingers found a length of rebar beside me, rust flaking against my palm. I gripped it, felt its weight, measured the distance between us. The flashlight clicked off. "I know you're here, Ms. Edwards." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Dr. Morrison sent me. He wants to talk." I stayed frozen, every muscle locked tight. The boot appeared inches from my face, black leather streaked with concrete dust. My fingers tightened on the rebar. "He said to tell you there's been a mistake, that you're not in the control group." The lie was so brazen, I almost laughed. My blood work results were etched into my memory. Every placebo marker, every unchanged metric, every falsified progress note. They thought I was stupid enough to believe them now, to come quietly because they offered pretty words. I rolled left as his hand reached down, swinging the rebar in a tight arc. Metal connected with his ankle with a sickening crack. He went down hard, flashlight spinning away. I scrambled up and ran, legs screaming, weaving between equipment and supply dumps. Behind me came cursing, the scrape of him trying to stand. His radio crackled again. I burst through the construction fence onto a side street lined with closed storefronts and dark windows. A church loomed ahead, its stone facade catching streetlight. The front doors stood open despite the late hour. I took the steps 2 at a time and plunged into incense-scented darkness. Votive candles flickered in their stands, casting dancing shadows across empty pews. My footsteps echoed on marble floors. I moved down the side aisle, past Stations of the Cross and donation boxes, toward the sacristy door at the back. The door opened into a narrow hallway lined with vestment cabinets and religious supplies. I grabbed a dark coat from a hook and pulled it on, ditching my distinctive jacket behind a stack of hymnal boxes. Blood from my knee left spots on the floor. I yanked paper towels from a dispenser and wrapped them around the wound, pulling tight until the bleeding slowed. Voices echoed from the main church. Multiple footsteps now. They'd brought reinforcements. A small window at the hallway's end showed an alley. I forced it open, feeling old paint crack and splinter. The drop was 8 feet to pavement. I stuffed my purse down the front of the borrowed coat and lowered myself through, hanging by my fingertips before letting go. The landing jarred every bone, sent white-hot pain through my injured knee. I bit down on my scream and hobbled forward into the alley's darkness. Behind me, someone shouted from the window. The alley opened onto a residential street where row houses pressed together like teeth. I moved between parked cars, keeping low, leaving drops of blood that looked black under the sodium lights. My breathing came in ragged gasps. The purse pressed against my ribs, flash drive inside like a second heartbeat. A car engine started somewhere behind me. Headlights swept across brownstone facades. I ducked through a wrought iron gate into a small courtyard garden, overgrown and wild. The gate's latch was rusted, but I forced it closed and crouched behind a stone bench thick with moss. My hands shook violently now, adrenaline giving way to shock. The knee throbbed with each heartbeat. The car cruised past slowly, spotlight mounted on its roof sweeping back and forth. Not police, private security, or worse. The light passed over the gate, lingered, moved on. The engine sound faded. I waited, counting seconds, then minutes. Cold seeped up through the ground into my bones. The courtyard smelled of rotting leaves and damp earth. Above, windows showed lives continuing. Television flicker, kitchen lights, the silhouette of someone doing dishes. Normal people living normal lives while I crouched bleeding in their garden, holding evidence that a pharmaceutical company had weaponized hope. Write only story text below this line. No headers, no part noas, no labels. My phone buzzed against my hip. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet courtyard. I pulled it out with trembling fingers, the screen's blue glow harsh against my face. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. Mrs. Edwards? A woman's voice, measured and precise. My name is Dr. Patricia Huang. I was the lead researcher on the trial until 3 months ago. I pressed deeper into the shadows behind the bench. The moss felt slimy through my torn slacks. How did you... Your colleague Mira sent me your number before they found her. A pause, the sound of traffic in the background. I know what you're carrying. I've been waiting for someone to finally take it. My throat constricted. Is she... Stable? They moved too fast, made it sloppy. The paramedics found her in time. Paper rustled on her end. Listen carefully. There's a federal building on Constitution Avenue. The northwest entrance has night security, a man named James Reed. He's expecting a medical supply delivery at 4 a.m. That's your window. I checked the time. 2:47. My knee felt like broken glass grinding together. I can barely walk. Then crawl if you have to. Her voice hardened. I put 8 years into that research. Genuine research before they corrupted it. Those 47 people in the control group, they trusted us, trusted me. I have to live with that. The line went dead. I hauled myself up using the bench, biting back a whimper as my knee buckled. The courtyard gate opened with a metallic shriek that set my teeth on edge. The street beyond lay empty, wet from mist that had started falling while I hid. Streetlights created pools of yellow that I would have to cross. I moved from shadow to shadow, one hand trailing along brick walls for support. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandage and down into my shoe, making it squelch with each step. The purse strap cut into my shoulder. The flash drive inside suddenly weighing more than all my years. 6 blocks. The distance might as well have been 6 miles. A delivery truck rumbled past, its headlights forcing me flat against a recessed doorway. The driver never looked my way. When the red taillights disappeared around a corner, I pushed forward again. My reflection caught in a darkened storefront window. A woman I barely recognized, face gaunt with pain, clothes torn and bloodied, eyes fever bright. The federal building rose ahead, its limestone facade luminous in the pre-dawn darkness. Cameras dotted the corners. I circled to the northwest entrance through a small plaza, where dead leaves swirled in eddies. The glass doors showed a security desk inside, a man in uniform reading something on his phone. I approached directly. No more hiding. My footsteps left faint red prints on the concrete. The guard looked up as I reached the doors. He was maybe 30, with the solid build of former military. His hand moved toward something under the desk, then stopped. He stood and walked to the doors, unlocked them with a keycard. "You're late." He held the door open, eyes scanning the plaza behind me. "Anyone following?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. The lobby's warmth hit me like a physical blow. My legs turned to water. The guard caught my elbow, steadying me. "Elevators this way." He walked me across the marble floor, his grip firm but gentle. We passed empty corridors, the building holding its breath in the gap between night and morning. The elevator climbed silently to the 7th floor. The guard led me down a hallway to an unmarked door, knocked twice. The door opened immediately. A black woman in her 40s stood there, FBI credentials clipped to her blazer. Behind her, a conference room table held recording equipment, laptops, a young Asian man adjusting camera angles. "Ms. Edwards?" She stepped aside, gesturing me in. "Special Agent Carmen Torres. We've been watching the Novacure trial for 16 months. I fumbled the flash drive from my purse, held it out. My hand shook so badly she had to steady it to take the drive. The moment it left my fingers, something inside me collapsed. I sagged against the doorframe. Agent Torres caught me, guided me into a chair. The young man brought water in a paper cup. I drank it in 3 desperate gulps, tasting copper underneath. "The control group," I managed. "They gave us nothing, sugar pills while telling us it was treatment, while we got sicker." "We know." Torres inserted the drive into a laptop. Files began cascading across the screen. Spreadsheets, emails, video recordings. "But we needed proof from inside. Someone willing to testify." The camera's red light blinked on. Torres sat across from me, a legal pad in front of her. "Are you ready?" I thought of the support group, those hollow faces week after week. Gerald, who'd stopped coming in October. Sharon, whose daughter brought her in a wheelchair now. 47 of us. Control subjects marked for suffering to make the real results look better by contrast. Medical fraud dressed up as science. I straightened in the chair despite the pain screaming through my knee, despite exhaustion weighing down every limb. Yes. Story continues. The community center's windows caught morning light, throwing gold rectangles across worn linoleum. 6 months had transformed the space, where folding chairs once circled in grim solidarity, now tables spread with pamphlets, coffee urns, trays of donated pastries. Ebony stood at the entrance, her cane barely needed anymore. The specialist had prescribed real treatment once the FBI shut Novacure down, criminal charges pending. She moved through the crowd, watching survivors embrace. Sharon wheeled herself to the refreshment table without assistance, her daughter laughing beside her. The tremor in Sharon's hands had diminished. Real medication, court-mandated compensation, hope, powerful medicines, all 3. A television crew adjusted lighting near the front. The reporter, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, reviewed notes on her tablet. Ebony recognized her from national broadcasts. The story had exploded. 43 news outlets, congressional hearings, the FDA promising reform. 3 other pharmaceutical companies faced investigation now, their trials suspended, their data forensically examined. 5 minutes, Ms. Edwards. A production assistant touched her elbow, pointed toward the podium. Ebony nodded, her chest tight, but not from disease. From something else entirely. Purpose, maybe. Or the weight of 47 names she carried now like prayer beads. The room settled. Camera lights blazed. She gripped the podium, feeling smooth wood under her palms, the microphone's cool metal against her lips. "We were disposable," she began. "Numbers on spreadsheets, control variables, not people who hurt, who needed help." She paused, scanning faces. Former subjects, advocates, journalists, a lawyer from the class action suit. "But we're still here." Her voice strengthened. The FDA announced new oversight protocols yesterday. Mandatory independent review boards, surprise audits, whistleblower protections. It won't fix everything, but it's movement. She lifted papers from the podium, testimony transcripts, settlement documents, proposed legislation. $73 million in compensation, divided among survivors and families. It doesn't replace health. Can't bring back those we lost. Her throat caught. But it acknowledges harm, admits wrongdoing. The reporter raised her hand. "What's next for you?" Ebony smiled, unexpected joy breaking through. "I'm training as a patient advocate, teaching people to read consent forms, ask questions, demand real answers. No one should sign their life away without understanding what they're actually agreeing to." Applause rippled through the room. She descended the platform carefully, her body still healing, still learning to trust strength returning. Sharon reached out, clasped her hand. No words, just pressure, connection, shared survival. Outside, spring air carried cherry blossom fragrance. Ebony walked to her car, parked beneath flowering branches. Pink petals drifted across the windshield like confetti. She opened the driver's door, paused, looking back at the community center. People streamed out, talking, laughing, some crying, but not from pain. From relief. From anger transmuted into action. Her phone buzzed. A text from Agent Torres. "Sentencing hearing next Tuesday. Your testimony made the difference. 4 executives pleading guilty. Thank you." Ebony typed back with steadier fingers than 6 months ago. "Thank you for listening." She drove home through tree-lined streets, stopping at a pharmacy where the clerk knew her name now, knew her prescriptions, smiled genuinely when handing over properly labeled bottles containing actual medication. The assistant district attorney had called it the largest medical fraud prosecution in state history. Ebony called it survival. Her apartment welcomed her with familiar quiet. She set her purse down, moved to the kitchen, made tea. Real chamomile, not the bitter hospital variety. She carried the steaming mug to her small balcony overlooking the neighborhood park. Children played on swings. A couple walked dogs. Normal life, precious and ordinary. Her laptop sat on the patio table. She opened it, navigating to the Patient Advocacy Training Portal. Module 7, Understanding Clinical Trial Phases. She'd become an expert through suffering. Now she'd transform that knowledge into shield and sword for others. The sun climbed higher. Warmth soaked into her shoulders, her back, places that had ached for years. The pain hadn't vanished completely. Some damage proved permanent. But it had diminished. Manageable. She could work now, plan, imagine futures plural instead of singular and short. Her calendar showed appointments extending months ahead. Speaking engagements, advocacy workshops, follow-up medical evaluations. A full life rebuilt from wreckage. Ebony sipped her tea, watched the world continue spinning, felt herself spinning with it finally. Not a control variable. Not a statistic. A woman who'd fought back and won something back. Not innocence, not perfect health, but agency, voice, power to prevent the next 47 people from suffering unnecessarily. The afternoon stretched before her, full of possibility. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.